Zoom check, test 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. I'm seeing levels. Hey everyone, welcome to our live coverage of the Starlink 11-18 mission. Apologies for that little peek behind the curtain, just making sure the mics were up and ready to go for this live coverage starting now. Currently T-minus 28 minutes, 7 seconds and counting away from the planned launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from out at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Propellant load is underway on the Falcon 9 rocket, which means SpaceX has locked into the T0 liftoff point that you see there on your screen of 1:10 p.m. Pacific, 4:10 p.m. Eastern, 2010 UTC. Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight now. We're joined behind the scenes by our editor, Stephen Young, who's running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our photographer team does have today off because this is a West Coast venture, but they'll be back in action in the overnight hours tomorrow in preparation for the flight of the next Starlink mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Pad 40. As we're coming on, there's quite a bit of political winds that are shifting as we're coming on the air. The publication Semaphore was the first to break the news that reportedly the White House is withdrawing the nomination of Jared Isaacman for consideration to be the next NASA administrator. This comes as the U.S. Senate was set to hold a full vote in order to confirm Isaacman's nomination, and this news has been met with a fair amount of pushback from folks on both sides of the aisle from what we're starting to see at the early ends of this. Obviously, this is breaking news. We're working to gather more details on it, but coming up front with you just to let you know the very latest as we are working behind the scenes to try to gather some more details and flesh out some of this reporting. The quote that has come from a White House spokesperson, according to the congressional correspondent Burgess Everett over at Semaphore, is, just quote the White House spokesperson here, quote, "It's essential that the next leader of NASA is in complete alignment with President Trump's America First agenda, and a replacement will be announced directly by President Trump soon," end quote. So we will keep tabs on that and bring you any additional updates if they do happen over the course of this broadcast. But by all accounts, Jared Isaacman will not be the NASA administrator, and a yet to be announced person will be. Of course, this news comes on the heels of NASA's announcement of its proposed budget, which does quite a bit of slashing to basically all parts of NASA, with essentially an exception carved out for more Mars-based exploration in a certain lens. So the budget documents have been published. We put some of those up on our X account so you can have a chance to peruse those at your leisure. And of course, we and other outlets will continue to parse through those and work through the details and bring that reporting to you in the days and weeks to come as the budget process continues here in the United States. All that being said, coming back to today's mission, as this is the most immediate thing coming up here, want to thank our moderators in the chat. I see Jeff Hansen and Rick Donner helping us out today. Appreciate the both of you being with us. I also want to thank our wonderful channel member community for making this live launch opportunity possible. So thanks to folks like the Rocket Girl, the Person That Exists, Cumulus Granatus, Lisa Lynch, KH, Sulfur for Lunch, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. As we're currently T minus 21 minutes, 36 seconds and counting, do want to call an audible on the live chat. Normally, our policy is to request that the live chat be kept free of overt politics and religious conversation. And broadly speaking, that still does remain the case. Obviously, the pulling of Jared Isaacman as the originally requested and nominated NASA administrator is both an important space topic of discussion as well as a political story. So, in that regard, for folks that do want to talk about the Isaacman nomination withdrawal, we're sort of creating an exception for that aspect of things in this space as well as the NASA budget, but a couple of caveats around that. If you would, of course, still keep the golden rule, remind, be respectful of others in this conversation in the live chat. That is, still an important thing that we want to maintain here in the live chats, that everyone feels welcome to have an exchange of comments and commentary. But we feel like, given the importance of this news, that we also don't want to forbid you here in our live chat community from talking about it, but maybe focus the conversation more in the direction of what this means for NASA, for space exploration, thoughts on possible replacements for Isaacman, that sort of thing. So, all that being said, taking a look out here at the GOES West satellite view of California, you see some decently heavy clouds that are really just hugging the coastline, but are staying offshore from Vandenberg for the most part. So we should have a somewhat decent view of the Falcon 9 rocket once we get that coming up in about 15 or so minutes. Speaking of our live chat, do want to thank our moderator Rick Donner, another one of our channel members, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Rick. And to our new 5 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Rick in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space and spaceflight, feel free to use the YouTube Super Chat feature to elevate your comment. And not only will you be helping support what we do here at Spaceflight Now, but you'll be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count. And that is always appreciated. Stepping briefly through the countdown timeline, got through a number of milestones since the fueling process got underway, so we'll be brief with the milestones that have already passed and get you caught up with what is still yet to come with the tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, things begin with the go-ahead for fueling at the 38-minute mark. Once fueling begins, it starts at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing up aboard the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, cryogenic helium begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes thereafter. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes was when the second stage RP-1 tank topped off and made way for the strung-back chill-down process to begin at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds. That's when SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load, which is set to begin now in less than 1 minute at the 16-minute mark. Coming up next after that will be the chill-down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank will be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. It's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Here at Vandenberg, it stays in that position up to and through liftoff. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. T-minus 16 minutes now. Second stage LOX load is now just beginning. In the future part of the countdown, 1 minute out, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup. Control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Coming up, it's again at the 4:10 Eastern, 1:10 UTC. Or excuse me, 1:10 Pacific, 4:10 Eastern, 2010 UTC. 15 minutes from now. Now 13 and a half minutes ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. Today's mission, Starlink 11-18, will actually create a little bit of movement in our leaderboard for the Falcon 9 frequent flyers. Taking a look at our top five, we've got B1071, which is on deck. 24 missions so far, set to fly for a 25th time today. Taking a look at the bar chart, here's where SpaceX stands on their Falcon family of launches after their most recent flight yesterday, supporting the GPS constellation in medium Earth orbit. Good launch of the space vehicle number 8 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station amid quite a bit of storm activity, so they were able to find a good weather slot and get that mission on its way at the end of the launch window. Today's flight represents the 16th Falcon 9 rocket to launch so far in May, closing out the month with number 16. Now, that's not a record per se for SpaceX, but it does tie the record that was set back in November of 2024 with 16 Falcon 9 launches in that month as well. If you had a chance to read our preview article on this mission, you saw a quote from Ann Mason, who is the director of the National Security Space Launch Program within SpaceX, noting that the company is targeting still 170 launches on the year. And so ramping up their cadence is going to be an important way to reach that milestone. One notable nugget in SpaceX's path to really ramping up their cadence, she said that they are producing a Falcon 9 second stage about every 2.5 days. Of course, the second stage is part of the vehicle that is not reused on each mission, so in order to kick up their cadence, they really need to have a high output for their second stage production, and it sounds like they're really stepping up to that plate in a needed fashion. Taking a look at where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it leaves the pad in just a little more than 10 minutes. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Once it does leave the pad, the Falcon 9 rocket, taking off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, is going to be flying in a southeasterly trajectory. Following the orange arc will be the path of the first stage booster following stage separation. B1071 is going to be touching down on the drone ship, which of course says "Still love you." That'll close out its 25th trip to space and back if all goes well. Not the launch leader for SpaceX, as we saw with the frequent flyers. That distinction still belongs to B1067, which most recently flew on May 13th on its 28th trip to space. SpaceX is continuing to certify its boosters up to 40 flights apiece, as well as the payload fairings at the top of the Falcon 9 stack. After coming back through atmospheric reentry, the fairing halves will deploy steerable parachutes to complete their descent to the Pacific Ocean water. Last time SpaceX really delved into their fairing recovery, they mentioned it saves them about $6 million per recovery effort. So, a very important part of SpaceX's business model, considering how often they're launching. They'll be brought aboard one of the recovery vessels, brought back through port, and then turn around for future missions. Most flown payload fairing half that SpaceX has mentioned was one that flew up to, oh, it's one that flew 30 times, I should say. Taking a look at our live chat. Appreciate the little more than 3,800 of you who are with us live today on a Saturday afternoon. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we are just about 8 minutes away from seeing the satellites head up to low Earth orbit. I also want to thank our other moderator hanging out with us today, Jeff Hansen, for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Jeff, who says, go Vandy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Starlink, Godspeed, 1071. And joining Mahoney with a $10 super chat, another one of our wonderful channel members who says, woohoo, who doesn't love rocket launches? That's why we're all here, right? 7.5 minutes to go, about 30 seconds away from the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Talking about the payload that's on board today's Falcon flight. Talking 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites of the optimized variety. The picture on the left-hand side of your screen is an image of those in their launch configuration before they were deployed on a previous mission. Today's flight will be the 48th Starlink mission of the year so far. These optimized Starlink satellites weigh about 1,267 pounds, about 575 kilograms, considerably lighter than the previous version of the V2 mini satellites. These, of course, are the version that SpaceX intends to continue launching up to the point that its Starship rocket is able to deploy the considerably larger version 3 Starlink satellites. For now, these have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters with their solar arrays unfurled. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. And they'll be deployed at about 183 miles or 295 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. Now, just under 6 minutes to go. The first stage kerosene tank should be full. And I want to welcome in new channel member Gary Haynes joining us at the mission specialist level. Appreciate the support, Gary. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Also want to thank channel member I'm Lita for a $5 super chat. It says, congratulations to my grandson, Nathan, class of 2025. Hi, Will and team. Yes, as new graduating classes continue to roll out freshly minted, want to continue extending our big congratulations and a job well done to all members of the class of 2025. Whether it's a graduation from preschool heading up to kindergarten, or you're graduating from college or other levels of higher education and making your way out into the world, we wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors, wherever those may take you. And we are now getting our first views of the Falcon 9 rocket amid a very cloudy backdrop there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Thankfully, not an egregious amount of fog that is obscuring the Falcon 9 rocket. That's just the vapor forming around the vehicle as a result of the super cold liquid oxygen that is flowing on board both the first and second stages, although it does seem quite a bit foggier the further back you go. Did hear that call out for a strong back retract getting underway. The clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings are going to be opening up, in the transporter erector. The strong back will be reclining about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. For those who are hoping to see the Falcon 9 with your own eyes a little bit further away, in real time, the real-time clock is about 6 seconds ahead of what you're seeing from the SpaceX clock in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. So just bear that in mind, and also factor in that YouTube may have a second or two of latency as well. Three minutes and counting. We should hear the call. The first
Stage
stage
1 LOX load is complete.
And there we go. We'll hear a similar call just about at the 2-minute mark.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that call out, the Falcon 9 rocket now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. That additional venting you're seeing are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
A good call there from SpaceX. Nearing the 1-minute mark here, we'll hear that the Falcon 9 is in startup. Control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch. That should be coming in the next 5 seconds.
LD is go for launch.
And with that confirmation, we are just a little more than 30 seconds away. Let's go ahead and listen to the final 30 seconds of the count, and we'll be back with you with commentary on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Starlink.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
M1D chamber pressures are nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
And with Falcon 9 traveling faster than the speed of sound, it's approaching max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Max Q.
Throttling down to get through this point in the mission. And a nice view of the California coastline as the rocket pulls away from Vandenberg. Soon they will be thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage before it's burned.
And back chill.
There's that call for that event. Coming up on a few events in fairly rapid succession now in less than a minute. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. The payload fairings should deploy just about at the 3-minute mark.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back startup.
All good callouts, good events from the Falcon 9 onboard cameras. As the hypersonic grid fins deploy,
Both
we
vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
should see the fairings deploy here momentarily.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good fairing separation, exposing those Starlink satellites to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. Again, once they re-enter the atmosphere, the fairing halves will use steerable parachutes to conclude their descent to the Pacific Ocean. In about 2.5 minutes, we'll have our next notable milestone here. That will be the first stage entry burn. That altitude monitor in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, that will shift from that gauge to showing a diagram of the booster's engines, showing you the diagonal of the three that will be used for the entry burn. Looks like the booster is just about at its apogee now, topping off at 116 kilometers in altitude today. Again, this first stage booster is going to be targeting a touchdown on the SpaceX drone ship called, of course, I Still Love You, which is stationed down there in the Pacific Ocean. A good landing would represent the 133rd booster landing for that drone ship and SpaceX's 455th successful booster landing to date. Now less than a minute away from the start of the first stage entry burn from beginning.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Good callouts, good visuals on the start of the entry burn, which will last about 26 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burns shut down.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn, we're now looking forward to the start of the landing burn, which will call upon the center engine on the Falcon booster. That landing burn set to begin in about 1 minute.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing light deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown for B-1071 on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
I'm back shut down.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a good call for both the shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine as well as a nominal orbit insertion, the second stage of the Falcon 9 will continue to coast until about T plus 52 minutes and 57 seconds. That will be followed at that point by a brief 2-second burn to circularize the orbit of the upper stage. Then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at about T plus 59 minutes and 51 seconds. Finally, after a good deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn of the upper stage engine to drive it back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. With a good liftoff and landing on the drone ship, let's go ahead and turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand. This was the 25th flight of Falcon 9 booster 1071. SpaceX's 483rd Falcon 9 launch to date. Today's flight was the 66th of the year so far, the 16th of this month. This is SpaceX's 144th orbital launch within the last 365 days. The 128th orbital launch from Space Launch Complex 4 East, and the 196th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's now where the bar chart currently stands for the Falcon family of rockets. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 133rd good landing on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Marked the 366th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 455th Falcon booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, today's flight marked the 23rd orbital launch from California, the 70th launch from U.S. soil, the 76th launch from a U.S. rocket company, still awaiting the next flight from Rocket Lab down in New Zealand. They pushed back a few days to allow for some non-ideal weather to pass and for some additional checkouts of the payload. So we'll continue to track the progress of that mission. But this flight for Starlink 11-18 was also the 120th orbital launch from around the world. 3 orbital mishaps so far on the year. Here's where our pie chart currently stands. US with 76 missions, China with 32, Russia with 6, India and Europe tied with 2 apiece, and Japan and Germany both on the board with 1 for each country. Taking one last look at our live chat here to thank a couple more folks for their comments and support. Thanks to Robert Philpott for a £1 super chat. Appreciate that support, Robert. Thanks for being with us today. Jeffrey, the $10 super chat, who says thanks Spaceflight Now and mods. And Phil Karn with some constructive comments saying the satellites are not exposed to the vacuum of to space vacuum for the first time at fairing jettison. The fairings are vented, so the payload decompresses rapidly at liftoff, which is a very fair comment, and we'll consider that in our verbiage and commentary as we move through our next launches. We appreciate all good feedback and constructive criticism on how we go about these launches and our commentary surrounding them. So certainly welcome feedback from folks in the community, as make no bones about the fact that we don't know every single thing about every single facet of a mission. So always looking for good opportunities to learn. So welcome the knowledge of a very smart community here on YouTube. Want to thank Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner, our moderators du jour, for helping us out in the live chat. Broad thank you to our channel member community for being so wonderful and supportive in our live launch coverage. Thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. One last reminder, our next orbital launch that we're tracking from SpaceX coming up on June 2nd in the just past midnight hours here on the East Coast, the Starlink 1219 mission, with a window that opens up just a hair before 1 a.m. here on the East Coast. So look for our live coverage to begin the, per usual, hour ahead of time. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson-Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, enjoy your weekend, and bye-bye.